Hello friends, for today's video we're going to be going through some anticipated fantasy releases for the month of July. As always, I will have the projected release dates as well as the books mentioned in the description bar down below, so that way if any of them sound interesting or if you'd like to have some of that information you can easily reference back to, it'll be there. I will add that sometimes the release dates are slightly different depending on where you live, so it's possible if you're in the UK that the release date might be a little bit different than US, but as of right now, these next three are all projected for the 9th. First up for this date, we have These Deathless Shores, and the description says, gorgeous and devastating, Lowe's debut fantasy is a richly reimagining tale of Captain Hook's origin, a story of cruelty, magic, lost innocence, and the indelible power of stories. Jordan was once a lost boy, convinced she would never grow up. Now she's 22 and exiled to the real world, still suffering withdrawal from the addictive magic dust of her childhood. With nothing left to lose, Jordan returns to the island and its stories of pirates and war and the heartlessness of youth, intent on facing Peter one last time on her own terms. If that makes her the villain, so be it. This one does have some sprinkles of some things that typically, I think a lot of us are ready to move away from. It does seem like it's a retelling. It's pretty clear that it is. And it also seems like it has some specifics that we've seen before. It's not just a retelling, but it's a villain origin story. And those had their time in the sun. We've seen quite a few of those. And I think a lot of us are just kind of ready for fresh, unique stories in general. However, I always still advocate for, if it sounds interesting, then I'm still going to try to give it a try. I'm going to try to give it a shot, I should say, so I'm not being repetitive. And if I end up thinking that it does really unique, interesting things, then the fact that it's a retelling is fine with me. So as a reviewer, if I can, will still try to check this one out and then let all of you know. But also, just in general, I definitely think that the idea of a Captain Hook origin story, while we've seen that before, it's not one that is currently in fantasy releases as often as things like Beauty and the Beast. Next up, we have one that is the first book in a series, and it is considered historical fiction and sci-fi and fantasy. So it seems like it's going to be kind of a nice combination. And it says a debut swashbuckling fantasy following a powerful sorceress. It's called The Price of Redemption. And it's following this woman as she is forced to run, where she meets a vast cast of characters, including a young sea captain who has need of a sea mage, perfect for fans of Patrick O'Brien, Naomi Novik, and Brian McClellan. I swear Naomi Novik gets thrown into some really random comps, where when I think Brian McClellan, I don't know that I think Naomi Novik also, but maybe this truly is a combination. I don't know. They're pretty different in their styles. But getting a little further into the synopsis, it says, despite her powerful magic, she must flee her homeland to escape death at the hands of the theocratic revolution. When a theocratic warship overtakes the ship bearing her safety, Enid is spared capture by the timely intervention of the Albion frigate Alarum under the command of Commander Rue Nath. These circumstances make for an odd alliance, and Enid finds herself replacing the Alarum's recently slain sea mage. Now an officer under Nath's command, Enid is thrust into a strange maritime world full of confusing customs, duties, and language. Worse, as she soon discovers, the threat of revolution is not confined to the shore. It does say it is swashbuckling, so I'll mention that again because I think that that description, it seems like it could lean into heavier, it could lean into fun, it could lean into adventurous, it could lean into more historical. So the swashbuckling, I think that's a very specific tone, at least that evokes a certain kind of story in my mind. So it seems like that one's going to be a lot of fun, very kind of edge of your seat. Next up, we have a book that's not quite a sequel, it's a companion novel, and that would be The Darkness Within Us. So this is a companion novel to The Shadows, The Shadows Between Us? Yeah, that's correct, The Shadows Between Us. I second guessed because then seeing Within, I was like, is it The Shadows Within Us? And now it's The Darkness? But no, it's The Shadows Between Us. This new one is The Darkness Within Us. But regardless, this is a companion novel where the first one is following this young woman I've mentioned before. It's super over the top. It knows what it is. It knows it's ridiculous. It follows this young woman who is determined to get herself a husband who is rich and powerful, and then as soon as she does, she plans to kill him, so that way she doesn't have to be married and she can just have all of the status and the wealth. And this next one seems like it is following a similar horrible person, and it also seems like it absolutely knows what it is. So if this sounds fun and slightly satirical and that is something that you're interested in, then maybe give this one a go. Since it's a companion, I don't know that you'll need to read the other one first, because obviously it's not a direct sequel, but oftentimes companion novels, it's still advisable to go in the chronological order. But anyway, the synopsis for this one, well, first off, I have to say, this is irrelevant, but the synopsis for this on NetGalley says, featuring spray-painted and stenciled edges, a metallic foil case stamp, detailed map and papers, a deleted scene, and a ribbon. I'm just like, we didn't need to know any of that. This isn't a retailer, but anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. Anyway, the synopsis. It says, Chrysantha Stathos has won. By hiding her intelligence and ambition behind the mask of a beautiful airheaded girl, she has become a wealthy duchess, and once her elderly husband dies, she will have all the freedom, money, and safety she's ever wanted. Or so she thought. A man claiming to be the estranged grandson of Chrysantha's lecherous late husband has turned up to steal her inheritance. To make matters worse, her little sister is going to be the queen, and she's rubbing it in her face. Chrysantha decides that the only thing to do is upstage Alessandra at her own wedding, and as for this grandson, he's got to go. Never mind that he's extremely handsome and secretive with mysterious powers. No, Chrysantha wants Eric's Deimos dead, and in the end, a Stathos girl always gets what she wants. Even the fact that his name, for no reason, has an X in it, I just feel like it so knows what it is. Eric's is spelled E-R-Y-X. Next up, we have A Rose by Any Other Name, and the projected release date is July 16th. This one says, my name has only been whispered heretofore. England, 1591. Rose's passion for life runs deep. She loves mead and music, meddles with astrology, and laughs at her mother's warnings to guard her reputation. When Rose's father dies and a noble accuses her and her dear friend of witchcraft, they flee to the household of respected alchemists in London. But as their bond deepens, their sanctuary begins to feel more like a cage. To escape, they turn to the occult, secretly casting charms and selling astrological advice in the hopes of building a life together. This thriving underground business leads Rose to fair young noble Henry and playwright Will Shakespeare, and so begins a brief and powerful romance, one filled with secret longings and deep betrayals. In this world of dazzling masks and decadent feasts, where the stars decide futures, Rose will write her own fate instead. So it says it's from the author of the Book of Gothel, which I quite liked that one. It is very historical fantasy, really emphasis on the historical. So if you like historical fantasy, this seems like one that maybe you'd want to check out. But I know that the Book of Gothel was one where some people were disappointed in how historical fantasy leaning it was. They wanted more fantasy, but it's just all about knowing what you're going to get. I have a feeling, given the synopsis and the fact that Shakespeare is apparently going to make an appearance in this, and the fact that it is supposed to be kind of rooted in our own world, I have a feeling this one's going to likely be quite historical leaning as well. Next up, also projected for the 16th, we have The Bright Sword, which is by Lev Grossman. I've not read any of this author's works, but I have heard that the Magician's trilogy in particular has a main character that is fairly hit or miss, and intentionally so, where they're kind of despicable, but then maybe they grow throughout the story. Maybe sometimes they revert back. I've never read it, but if I like this one, if I actually get around to this one before The Magicians, if I like this one, then I could see myself picking up that other series after. But regardless, The Bright Sword, it says, for anyone who's ever craved a seat at the round table, utterly enchanting. So it seems like it is somewhat King Arthur inspired. It does say a novel of King Arthur. So it says, a gifted young knight named Colum arrives at Camelot to compete for a spot on the round table, only to find that he's too late. The king died 2 weeks ago at the Battle of Camelot, leaving no heir and only a handful of the knights of the round table that have survived. They aren't the heroes of legend like Lancelot. They're the oddballs of the round table, from the edges of the stories, like Sir Palamedes, the Circean knight, and Sir Dagonot, Arthur's fool, who was knighted as a joke. They're joined by Nimue, who was Merlin's apprentice until she turned on him and buried him under a hill. Together, this ragtag fellowship will set out to rebuild Camelot in a world that has lost its balance. But Arthur's death has revealed Britain's fault lines. God has abandoned it, and the fairies and monsters and old gods are returning, led by Arthur's half-sister, Morgan. Kingdoms are turning on each other, warlords lay siege to Camelot, and rival factions are forming around the disgraced Lancelot and the fallen queen. It is up to Gollum and his companions to reclaim Excalibur, solve the mysteries of this ruined world, and make it whole again. But before they can restore Camelot, they'll have to learn the truth of why the lonely, brilliant King Arthur fell, and lay to rest the ghosts of his troubled family and of Britain's dark past. The first major Arthurian epic of the new millennium, The Bright Sword is steeped in tradition, full of duels and quests, battles and tournaments, magic swords, and fisher kings. It also sheds a fresh light on Arthur's Britain, a diverse, complex nation struggling to come to terms with its bloody history. The Bright Sword is a story about the imperfect men and women, full of strength and pain, who are looking for a way to reforge a broken land in spite of being broken themselves. I think that one kind of took me for a little bit of a roller coaster within that description itself, as initially it seemed like, oh, ragtag group. They're going to try to have this adventure together without King Arthur. What are they going to do? And then at the end, it's like, they're all broken, but they're trying their best. So it seems like maybe it's going to have a lot more emotional depth and have hard-hitting moments, which definitely sounds like something that I would really enjoy. The last one, which is projected for July 30th, would be Long Live Evil. And this one sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun and kind of seems like it's a love letter to the fantasy reader. So it's an adult epic fantasy. When her whole life collapsed, Ray still had books. Dying, she seizes a second chance at living, a magical bargain that lets her enter the world of her favorite fantasy series. She wakes in a castle on the edge of a hellish chasm in a kingdom on the brink of war. It's home to dangerous monsters, scheming courtiers, and her favorite fictional character, the once and forever Emperor. He's impossibly alluring, as only a fictional character can be, and in this fantasy world she discovers she's not the heroine, but the villain in the Emperor's tale. So be it. The wicked are better dressed, with better one-liners, even if they're doomed to bad ends. She assembles the widely disparate villains of the story under her evil leadership, plotting to change their fate. But as the body count rises and the Emperor's fury increases, it seems Rey and her allies may not survive to see the final page. So that one was one where when I first started the description, when I was first reading the synopsis, I was like, oh, I mean, okay, it seems fun. She goes, it's portal fantasy, and then the Emperor is handsome and all those things. That's nice. But then to find out she's the evil character and that she's trying to reset all the villains to being good, but maybe fate has it just destined for her to be bad. I don't know. I just think that it sounds like it could be a lot of fun. So that one is definitely one that I want to keep on my radar. But anyway, that's it for some projected releases for the month of July. If there's any I didn't mention that you're excited for, feel free to mention those in the comments down below. As always, like I said, I'll have all the info in the description bar so you can reference back to that at your convenience. Thanks so much for watching though. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.